Coordinator at the ASCCA, and Jennifer Howse, who is the education specialist at the Rothney Astrophysical Observatory. And I'm an educational interpreter, so lots of education. The Ann Sandy Cross Conservation Area, if you have not heard about that, it's a 4,800 acre conservation area. Oh, that's what we're going to talk about today. Skip on to that. Yeah, it's gone. And it's just outside of Calgary, which is in Alberta, which is in Canada, which is north of here. And it was generously donated by Ann and Sandy Cross Conservation, or Ann and Sandy Cross. That's not their last name. And it was originally donated with the intention, they had 3 guiding principles in order for this land donation to remain. Was the first, that it had to be for the protection of the native wildlife. The second was we had to use it for education. And the third one was that we had to manage human use of the area, which we have been doing. We just celebrated our 30th anniversary last year. Thank you. So we are a wildlife reserve, which means that we are required to be shut at night by the government of Alberta's laws. So 11 p.m. we're closed, and we don't open again until 4 a.m. No, those are lovely, better pictures. So there's lots of wildlife there, lots of flora and fauna. So the way that we fit into the dark skies is we are a nocturnal preserve, which I'll tell you a little story about that. So in 2010, we apparently tried to apply to become a dark sky preserve as recognized by the Royal Astronomical Society of Canada. And we didn't fit under this designation because we close at 11 p.m. and if you're an astronomer, that's a big bummer. In 2014, I was at a conference very similar to this, and I was approached by a gentleman who introduced himself as Roland, and he wanted to know, like, if I had ever heard of this application that we had done, and I hadn't. And then he proceeded to tell me what a nocturnal preserve was and why we couldn't become a dark sky preserve because we're shut. And the Calgary Light Pollution Abatement, sorry if I get it wrong, committee had decided that, you know what, this is a really good idea. We do need dark spaces, even if it is just for wildlife. And they were trying to, they also had people on the national level who were interested in this, and they were trying to push the new designation through, and they really wanted us to continue with the original application we had started in 2010 to get this a national designation. So 2015 we became Canada's first one, thanks to a lot of the hard work that they did. Roland is here, so that stuff might happen to you if you bump into him. He might try and recruit you to do something. And so the definition of a nocturnal preserve, in their own words, is a region set aside for biological conservation. There is no general requirement for nighttime public access. For astronomy, ecotourism, though both may be a part of the park's outreach program. And over the last 3 years, we have been continuing to try and make this education part of our programs. And there's a little comic renditioning of how we came to be a nocturnal preserve. Okay, next.
All right, it's one of our volunteers designed this for us. It's a little birthday party for a bat, how we became, and he was excited when the lights went out. All right, so I'm just going to talk really briefly about some of our education programs. So at the Cross Conservation Area, we run Conservation Education Day programs, which support experiential, hands-on, multicultural or multi-curricular learning in an outdoor environment. We also have a Chevron Open Minds program where we bring students into at the site for a full week of learning, and where they cover an overreaching idea. I should move this on. An overarching idea, rather, that they incorporate into their full year. And the reason I mention is because the program we're going to be discussing, our joint program between the Cross and the Rothney, many of those ideas are incorporated into their week of studies, where we do get a little bit more time to spend with them and learn more about the nocturnal world. So our programs cover grades K to 12, as well as post-secondary, and every year we bring in about over 5,000 students that we educate. And since we've been open, we've had approximately 120,000 students cross through our doors to learn about the wonderful world of nature. One of our initiatives that we called Conservation in the Night has engaged over 15,000 youth and community members to learn about conservation and enhance their understanding of natural areas, as well as the conservation practices that can help protect the nocturnal environment in our area and the community. And some of the community events that occur during this through this initiative is our annual Star Night that Laura had mentioned with the Royal Astronomical Society of Canada, as well as we have our Halloween Howl, where we have programming both indoors but also a lot outdoors in the dark, where we encourage people to embrace the dark. All right. So you might be wondering why a conservation area is so interested in light abatement. Well, I think a picture's worth 1,000 words. And I think you've seen this photo already. If you look up into the top left corner in the western component of the Canada, oh, that is correct.
Just above the arrows.
Yeah. So if you see here, that is Calgary. Red Deer is a city north of us, and then Edmonton is north of that as well. So we've got a north-south corridor that, as you can tell, has a very strong brightness concentration. So that's sort of to me, that sort of talks about a scary story, that we have so much light pollution in that one little corridor where we live. So as well, if you see the next picture, this is a view from the Cross Conservation Area north towards the city of Calgary. And the city of Calgary is about a 1.2 million population. So this is what is encroaching on us now. There's other boundaries of our area that aren't as well lit, but that is definitely something we are concerned about, because we're only about 10 or 15 kilometers away from the city. So where we believe in our light abatement philosophy that our mission and values align well with the nocturnal preserve designation, in that we are really focused on reducing light pollution as well as improving the nocturnal environment where the native species reside and protecting the ecological integrity of the area. We also hope that the nocturnal designation inspires others to undertake this conservation ethic for nocturnal environments and ensure that many more people understand and appreciate it. Thank you.
So I'm Jennifer. I'm with the Royal Astronomical. No, I'm not. Not this talk. Yeah, I am the honorary president. I just want to shut that out there. Okay, so I'm with the Rothney Astrophysical Observatory, the University of Calgary's observatory, and we've been on site there for almost 50 years. We're looking forward to an anniversary date coming up just in a couple of years, and this gives you a couple of shots of the observatory. Now, the University of Calgary is something that we are working on very diligently, and that we have new policies that I just want to let you know that we do acknowledge that the observatory is on traditional Blackfoot and Tsuut'ina lands, and that's part of our reconciliation process, is that we always acknowledge where the university is actually located. And so those are the traditional lands, traditional peoples that have lived in the foothills regions. And from my office, not only do I get a beautiful view of the foothills, but I also get the Rocky Mountains And so that's what I can see from my office and in the observatory building. So we have 5 research telescopes on site, 4 of them optical, 1 of them is radio, and this beast right here is the ARCT, and it's the 1.8 meter diameter telescope. And then we've got, this is our first telescope that was put on site, and this is actually a real workhorse for the observatory because, of course, it can be accessed remotely. And so the most recent, most exciting project, and we're hoping for a lot more, is that we were able to make connections with the Beijing Normal University in Beijing. So the director of the observatory is Dr. Phil Angel, and so he actually took a flight to Beijing, and at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, he was able to teach a class at the Beijing Normal University and connect to this particular telescope that was in this dome, and he was able to show the students 1 o'clock in the afternoon in Beijing, but it was, of course, it was nighttime in Alberta, and they got to see beautiful Alberta skies as part of their studies, and then they were able to study a similar project to the same that the students at U of C were working on. So it's one of many collaborations that we're working towards. So this, of course, I laughed when I heard earlier a talk about astronomy is for everyone. I still remember seeing that there was a letter to one of our local newspapers of why is this a thing, why is this an issue? There's just one guy, I guess I'm the one guy, that is up on a hill looking at stars, and why is this a thing? So it's very important, obviously, it's fundamental to our work. It's fundamental to our research, but also the observatory is a teaching and research lab as well as a public outreach center for the University of Calgary. So it's, this is a way that we can connect people, and the universe is for everyone. So like I said, we do public outreach. This gives you an idea of one of our open house nights, or we also have Milky Way nights. So we average around 12,000 people a year attend our events, and this is the University of Calgary's Rex, the dinosaur, at one of our solar eclipse events. And we put out very little information that we're going to be observing this past solar eclipse, and we were absolutely run over by people. We had thousands of people show up when we were expecting maybe 500. So it's obviously something that resonates with the public, that they want to learn more about the sky. And we do like to reach out to the community, especially our immediate community. And so once a year we have an annual Howdy Neighbor barbecue. And so we offer hamburgers and hot dogs, and then we also say Sky Science on the barbecue, or on the grill. And so this is a chance for us to tell people in our immediate area what it is that we're working on, what our research entails, and just what we can see if only we had dark skies. And it's actually an easy sell. We've got a lot of people who are living in rural areas, and they enjoy the nice dark skies, and that's why they're living there. So it's an easy sell to get them to not put up big lights around their properties. So we have a lot of partnerships. One of our strongest partnerships that we're very proud of is our links with the Royal Astronomical Society. They're very knowledgeable, very helpful. They're with us at all of our events and talking about light pollution. So I just wanted also to point out, so we have about 12,000 people come to our events, and every single one of those people hears our work and how we're working on light abatement solutions. Dark sky country is, we're also very, very fortunate that our local councillor in the Foothills County she's very pro dark skies. And so it's through her work with Roland, with Dr. Langell, all working together, and have came up with this dark sky county. There's bylaws, so we can actually have some enforcement behind asking people to keep their lights down and use smart lighting. Also, these signs, we're very happy to say that if you're driving in that area, you're actually going to see these signs along the highway, which doesn't happen unless you have a politician who's willing to stick their neck out and help you out with some of these projects. And then we are the Southern Alberta representative for the International Dark Sky Association, and we're not one of their better members because we don't report enough. We do lots of hard work and we don't report enough on that. So we do school programs. We see average, 2,000 to 4,000 students. And we do, the programs that we do are grade 6, because it's sky science, grade 8, which is light and optics, and grade 9, which is space exploration. And so we just do those 3 grades and offer the programming. Once again, we also talked about light pollution with all of these students. So we're actually located about 5 minutes up the road from where the Anne and Sandy Cross is. Our land was actually also owned by the Cross family, and 50 years ago now, Dr. Clark went out, did a drive around. There was actually a Government of Canada Observatory out there already, and he saw this beautiful piece of land with this wonderful south-southwest exposure, and he talked to the owner of the land, Sandy Cross, and he thought it would be wonderful to turn it into an observatory. So that's a quarter section or 160 acres of land, and it's still to this day one of the larger donations to the University of Calgary that we're very thankful for. And so that's where the observatory is located, and then of course we've built up over the time. So since Maureen and Laura were just down the road, we thought, wouldn't it be great if we could do a combined joint program? And that's how where all of this, the new programming idea came from, is wouldn't it be great, we should do something, we have so many common themes. And so what we do is we have the students come, grade 6 students. We decided that was the best connection, curricular connections. And as you all know, even though teachers, intrepid teachers, want to expose their children to all sorts of sciences and experiential learning, they do need to be accountable, so there has to be curricular connections. And so in this case, it's grade 6, sky science, and also forest and trees is the other connection in grade 6 in the Alberta learning. And so that's how the idea came together. That's how we decided to create this nighttime program.
We just all like taking turns talking. All right, so I'm just going to talk to you a little bit about the challenges we had when we started to design this program. And one of the issues would have been the time of year. So because we needed darkness for our night sky viewing, we needed to focus on the colder months. And in Canada, that can be cold. And so we also needed enough daylight hours to do the biological conservation component. So given that and daylight savings time, we ended up in a time frame from November to March is when we offer our programming. Now, I'm going to segue right into weather, since we've just been talking about the time of year. That is also can be a challenge for us, as we have over half our program is in the outdoors, so we definitely are challenged at times by weather changes. Calgary, the students could be coming out at -20 or colder, Celsius, thank you, and as high as 0 to 10 degrees Celsius. So, and during the winter months, Calgary also experiences something called a Chinook. And if you haven't heard of it, it's when this beautiful, warm, dry weather or air comes in on the eastern slopes of the Rockies and can create actually almost a 40 degrees Celsius change in the weather within a few hours. Chinook is also is known as a term that is, Chinook is defined as, snow eater, and it does eat the snow. So things can change drastically in any given time during the winter as well. The other thing that we have to be concerned about is, as all you astronomers know, is cloud cover. So that can completely change the orientation of our program as well. The other challenge we have is with busing. So those yellow school buses that come deliver the students are our friends because they bring the students to us, but they can also be our nemesis because of the cost to come out to our sites. Our sites are outside the city limits of Calgary, so it costs more. And because the students are going to 2 different sites, they have to be staying within the location so that they can transport them to the next location. So that also adds to the cost. As well, we need to be able to find drivers that will be willing to come on off hours, away from regular working hours. Another challenge that in planning this program is teacher motivation. Let's think about it. You've just spent 6 or 7, 8 hours with your students. Let's spend the late afternoon and evening with them too. So we have to make it very, very endearing or engaging to bring them out. And we also recognize that the students also face challenges like packing dinner as well as their lunches for the day. So we try and overcome that also by having more movement activities available to them and getting them on the land and walking. That's why if weather is a problem for us, and having to bring them indoors after they've already been in school for 7 hours, that can lead to other challenges we won't get into here. So it can be interesting. Finally, what we find the most interesting for us is all the big ideas and concepts we want to share. And there's so much great research, and many from people here at this conference, which has been just outstanding to be a part of. So it's really hard to pare down the content to the amount that you want to share with the students. And it's so important to have the concepts presented, but also with experiential learning activities associated with it. As experiential learning not only provides them the experience of the activity, but also reflection on the activity for further learning. So there's a lot of powerful education concepts that we want to get across. So it's tricky to get that breadth of concept within the 3 to 4 hour time frame. And we wish we had more time, and that's when I was mentioning the week-long program does afford us a little bit more time because we have the students there every day. But in a one-off day, 3 p.m. to 8 p.m. segment, it can be a little bit challenging. But we just think we're just lucky to have that all that information to be able to draw on and all those different ideas to be able to share with the students. All right, so we're going to move over to some essential questions. Back to Laura.
Can I stay on page 4? So as Maureen and Jennifer mentioned, we have to get the tie into the curriculum. Which one is the little laser here?
It's right above the arrows.
Okay. And so that's so they can justify the cost of the program to their admin and get the students out there. Things that tied in really well was trees and forests. It's very obvious if you're a grade 6 teacher that a conservation area is a fantastic place to go and show children forests that they might not get in the city. And again, with the sky science, going to an actual observatory to see sky science and how it's actually used by astronomers is an excellent tie-in. Then we went with some sneaky things like they also have to study aerodynamics. So bats are one of the most acrobatic flyers on the planet and have all these crazy adaptations. So we threw in a game about bat and moths in there. And then there's stewardship and citizenship. So the thing that this little part in the middle here, where it's brighter, that all these have in common is light pollution. So if you are at if you're trying to study the stars, light pollution is obviously a huge problem for sky science. If you are doing trees and forests, light pollution becomes a factor because those trees aren't going to be able to do their seasonal cycles the way they should be able to naturally, which is going to cause some problems with their growth. And that impacts later on whether or not we're using those trees for forestry or whether it's an actual animal that's using those trees for homes or for food. The bat and moths, when we're playing the game, we can actually introduce them to how light pollution is going to impact not only the bats but also the moths and how this is going to have changes in the food chain. And then we're hoping for the stewardship is that they can go home, and all of our programs, we try and make them understand that yes, there's nature out at a conservation area, but there's also nature anywhere you go if you just walk outside, even if you're inside. I'm sure a lot of you have met nature well inside, whether it's a favorable experience with a spider walking by or an unfavorable experience with the same spider. But it's there. And so how can they make their community and their own neighborhood a better place, now understanding that light pollution does impact all these different aspects of it? So when they get to the cross-conservation area, we have to introduce the term of scotobiology, so the study of how dark impacts things. Most of them haven't heard this term. They also, most of them have never heard of a nocturnal preserve unless the teacher happened to inform them that's where they're going. And then circadian rhythms, but after we introduce them to these terms, we sort of throw them out onto the trails and get them outside experiencing nature. So our first stop on our interpretive hike, we do the bat and moth thing and let them experience what it'd be like for not a real bat to hunt because they're essentially playing Marco Polo. But in order to make them use echolocation, we have to blind them. Real bats aren't blind. So we introduce them to this game and they're playing it, and then partway through the game we change the rules, and so we have this rule of if light pollution was impacted, here are the things as a moth that you're no longer allowed to do because if you're around a light you wouldn't be able to do this, which a lot of them complain about. Well, that's not fair, but it wasn't fair for the moth either. And then we continue along after this game down our interpretive hike, and there's a really nice view on the cross conservation area, which we should have had a photo for, but we don't, of the city. And they get to talk about just looking out over the city, what are the obstacles that these animals have to deal with on a daily basis when they're trying to get from point A to point B. And then we try and get them to think, well, on a global scale, what are these obstacles? Are they still there? And then we talk to them about birds and their migration routes and what they're going to have to deal with. And then again, we play another game where it's almost like British Bulldog. You have the city and your two city boundaries, and you've got predators in the middle, and you have to get from your winter to your summer habitat. But as every round progresses, there's more light pollution, so the city boundaries expand into your little corridor. And again, they start saying, well, this isn't really fair. So it's good. We want them to come away thinking that we're not fair people. And then we have another game, which I'm not going to describe in detail because Maureen will do that in a second, involving the seasonal effects of trees and forests. But then afterwards, we try and wrap up and get them again to consider, okay, now that we know these impacts, what are some things that you can do immediately when you go home? What are some things that you could do long term when you go home? That's all for that.
Thanks. Thanks. All right. So before I describe that one activity, we're just going to talk a little bit about the themes that the program is trying to incorporate. And one of the themes we focus on from the conservation side is the importance of seasonal cycles on the trees, in the ecosystem, on animal, particularly bird migration, and on biodiversity. So we want the students to get an understanding of the impact of light pollution on the biological world of animals and trees in the ecosystems, including flight adaptations of bats and moths that Laura was describing, migration of animals, again, particularly birds, and the importance of seasonal changes on trees. As well, we want to have the students provide the understanding of the impacts on the biological world, including humans, and in their own community. So we want them to think about what they've learned and how do they apply it back into their community, and think about current developments, especially human developments, within this community. Currently, we have the development of a ring road coming around the city of Calgary. 2/3 of it is done, and the last component of it, the last 1/3, is called the Southwest Ring Road. Well, there's an amazing picture from the space station that not only do you see all the lights of Calgary, you can actually make out the entire ring road that's already been developed. Space station is 400 kilometers away. That's not a good image. So we just want them to think about what decisions they would think about making if they were in that position to be able to impact that, and just to have them think about how these aren't ideas that are somewhere else and somewhere someone else is living. These are ideas right in our own backyard that we can think about and address. So that other activity that Laura was discussing, has to do with our trees, and we like affectionately known as bud out or leaves. So what we do, we start by having, we're going to just go into a little bit more detail here. Let's start by students going outside, out in the natural world, and look for signs of life, which is always interesting because to find out what they believe is signs of life on trees and plants can vary between, I don't see anything green, it must be dead. I see something green at the bottom. That's not part of the tree, that's moss. So, and then eventually we get onto the quest for the buds. So once we spend some time exploring and being very tactile and right in nature, we then bring the students back together and ask them, well, what do you think triggers changes in plants and trees? And then we start talking about, what is a season and why do we have seasons? So we go through some of that basic fundamental knowledge, and then it's time for the drama. So at that point, plays and movement is really important because it tells a story. It allows the students to be in a role where they are very immersed in the actual process. They're learning the process in a lot of detail. And in movement also has been known to, and studies have shown that it not only anchors learning, but it can accelerate learning as well. So once we look at the natural cycle of plants, then we introduce the idea of light pollution into that area. So we have photos that will show some light fixtures in the city that are shining down on some trees. And most of the tree might be already changing colors, but the leaves that are under the light fixture are still green. So then we discuss the impacts of what will happen to that tree if that part of the tree doesn't go into senescence, which is where they store all the nitrogen in the growing organs, so to help them grow for the next year. And over time, that could impact the health and welfare of the tree and even cause it to die. So we talk about those, as well as we talk about the impacts from that would lead to the food chain. So we look at the entire, we focus on the interconnectivity of all living things. All right, so I think at this point, Jennifer will come up. Oh, there's our activity, sorry. Forgot to move it. So we just have a few pictures and just same description that I just gave in the organization. But now moving on to Rothney and their learning plan.
Okay, so what happened is that the students were at the Ann and Sandy Cross from 3 p.m. in the afternoon, and then once they're finished up there, then they bus over 5 minutes down the highway to the Observatory, and they have supper, and then we have to try and get them all back focused on learning. And one teacher had a pretty crazy idea, and it was a lot of fun. They actually played, do you remember that old 70s disco song, Rasputin? And so it was like a Dance Dance Revolution thing that the teacher played, and all the kids got up and danced to it, and then they were like, okay, bring on the astronomy. So it was like, movement it's a thing, it's important. And so what we want them to experience and understand while they're at the observatory is how astronomers know what we know. How do we know what we know? How do we understand all of these very distant objects? And it's all from light, of course, light that comes to us, and it's our ability to understand this light and to quantify this light and to observe that light. That's how we know what we know. So that's really the basis of where we start with our learning program. Is once they've had their supper and their dance, is that we get right into heavy-duty astronomy right away. And our themes are that we want them to understand what is a star, how is it formed, how does a star produce energy at its core. We want to talk about, when we talk about groupings of stars in the 88 constellations that are recognized by the International Astronomical Union, what that means. And then very specifically, we want them to understand Orion. Now, we chose Orion because we are doing these programs during the winter, and in the winter in Alberta, Orion is around, starting January to March, we've got Orion in our southern sky, and it's quite beautiful and spectacular to see. And Orion is also a really great one to be able to talk about the different light that you're going to see within a single constellation. And then we also talked about specifically about some of the stars that are in Orion, and red Betelgeuse, very blue Rigel, and of course the biggest bonus of all is once they've actually gone out and they've had a chance to observe the constellation, observe the stars in the constellation, they get to look through a telescope and see the Orion Nebula, which is always a real wow moment for the students. So once we give them that nice primer and we talk about the constellation, then they go outside and they complete a worksheet, and it's a star count. And I know star counts are very important, I think, to all of the outreach that any sort of light pollution abatement program, because it's such a nice, easy way to understand immediately what you can see and what you can't see. Just have a look up. Once you know what you're looking for, it's very easy to see what's obscured and what isn't obscured. Also very important is that we talk about the differences, of course, between natural light pollution and artificial light pollution. That's very important that they can distinguish between those two. So, of course, this is the IAU's map, and we get them to go through, based on luminosity, the different stars that they're able to see. Once they're able to complete their workshop and, complete their worksheet, and we come back inside and we discuss who was able to identify which stars. And very important is that once we've discussed that and they understand what they're looking for, is that we want to take them to take this worksheet home. Next night, go out again, same time, and look around their community. What's different between being a rural area and an urban area, and how much light pollution is affecting and obscuring their view of the sky. It's also a really great opportunity for them to be a citizen scientist, and we really important. And of course, we do actually encourage them to go to the Globe at Night website and also participate in their programs as well as the University of Calgary has a citizen science star count on our website.
Okay, just a little summary of some outcomes and lessons learned, broken down into prior to the program, delivery of program, and following our program. So we've learned that a questionnaire might be useful for them to have completed before they come to the areas for the program, to sort of establish a baseline. So find out what their level of knowledge is on light pollution, what the perception of it, what are some of the effects of light pollution, are they aware of any examples of lighting issues in their community, and can they think of examples, think of examples of light abatement strategies. As well, which will be a video that you'll be seeing in about 5 minutes, is also a possibility to show them a lot of different features about a resource for teachers to use for light pollution discussion in nocturnal environments. As far as the actual delivery of the program, we determined that the curriculum priorities of stewardship and citizenship is the most impactful and can result in a call to action. So we do cover all the curriculum connections we discussed, but those are the ones that sort of came out that students really became passionate about as well. And also it's important to mix talking points with stories, with videos or visuals, and experiential learning activities to address all different types of learners. Even on the logistical side, because it's the end of the school day for this programming, we need the students to be active and walking on the land and experiencing things tactile and very much involved in being a part of the environment. Finally, for the program delivery, the wrap-up is very important, and it's important to have a wrap-up at both locations, wrapping up the biological conservation concepts as well as and then wrapping up the astronomy concepts at the Rothney, and then a final overall completion of a citizenship discussion. So following the program, we are encouraging students to take action and sort of look at their own communities and what can be done. We talk about what we value, and we try and get them to reach out to us on what kind of ideas that they can come up with. So they can come up with things, well, first of all, they would take the citizen science approach by completing the Orion worksheet in the city and doing a comparison between the city and what they found outside the city. Secondly, some ideas that they would follow up with could be something within their own backyard, talking to their parents about what can be changed within their own, just in their own little area. As well, students have also been encouraged to create presentations and different education learning events, and we've even seen some examples of that through some of the students. There's been some education learning opportunities. We've had different schools provide those to not only the students of the school, but to the general public. And in fact, in one class, one of the students, her father is actually a City of Calgary planner. So every night she came home, when she came home, she actually put together a PowerPoint presentation on how her dad should help the city and what he needed to do to make it better. So she was an incredibly great advocate, and we still have to continue following up with her. She's actually in our video as well. So that was pretty impressive. On her own volition. We didn't, not on anything we had said to do or for her teachers to said to do. So that was pretty cool. As well, journaling is an important part of reflecting on the experience, and students will journal to show their knowledge. We can also look at them even doing simple journaling, including activities that are based on I used to know, ... and then now I know. And it just can reinforce their learning in the concepts. We could also take that questionnaire that we started as a baseline and reintroduce it to them after the fact as well. And of course, evaluations and assessments are always important to know how well things are going and how well students are learning and teachers are impacted by this program. Right. Now on to Laura.
Okay, and then the person behind the sign in this picture, we want to point out, is our counselor, Suzanne Ohl, promoting her sign. But through our partnership and with our partnerships with people like the RASC, we've done a lot of different approaches, which many of you have probably already done, in regards to light pollution advocacy. Whether that's talking about like why are taxpayers' money paying to light up our skies, using science of the dark skies. So they did a dark sky quality measurements, not only at the Rothney Observatory, but they also brought their little machine out to the conservation area, and that is something that is published. There's lots of projects and initiatives, so including this dark sky country campaign, which is why we're all wearing our little pins. They're very, very important. We've been trying to sneak light pollution into other weird places. Like we went to an experiential educator conference and proceeded to give our demonstrations of our programs. And pretty much 100% of the audience said they had never heard of light pollution before we came. We've gone to environmental conferences, which again is very surprising. Most of them have not heard of light pollution before as a thing. And we've presented at a prairie conservation web series about the work that we're doing. We're working with different levels of government and different political parties. We have 3 political parties which have members who are saying, yeah, okay, this is something that we want to learn more about from you, and we want to help you try and push this initiative to get this Calgary Ring Road built with better lights. We also, and there's also lots of inspiration that you can get from dark sky. So at the Rothney, they had a photography contest where you had to submit photos that were taken in between the hours of 1 and 4 a.m. And then one of the stories that I like the best from their inspirations is we had a citizen come out to our sites, and they had never heard about the light pollution problem with the ring road. And once he heard about it, he became very passionate about it. And he started a petition on change.org about how the city should build this ring road with better lights. And then this petition was seen by a teacher who proceeded to show her grade 5-6 students. And then her grade 5-6 students, because they were doing sky science, decided, we want to know more about this, so we're going to get experts in. So they contacted the Rothney, and they contacted us, and they contacted the energy companies to come in and talk to them about what we were doing and what's this issue. And then after all of our talks, the students decided that they wanted to do more. And so through their own initiative, with the teachers just basically getting checks from the admin for them to proceed, they arranged to have a dark sky festival at their school. They invited the entire community of Bragg Creek. They invited government officials, and they invited us. There's someone else they invited, but I can't see that in my notes right now. And they split themselves up into 3 different groups. So as their own student body, they decided on whether or not they were the artists, whether they're the scientists, or whether they're the organizers. And so they had these little contingents working to get the Sky Festival up and running. And then when we were there, we were just blown away by the amount of work they put into making original plays, singing songs, having little research papers that they had done up by themselves. And it was just really cool to see, because most of these kids are this big or shorter. And the amount of passion they had was amazing. Which brings us to our last part of this presentation, is we are going to show you a video that we created to so that teachers would have a resource of what is a nocturnal preserve and something they could help to use with their education for their students. And for this video project, we worked with a lot of people. The RASC was a very strong partner and helped us a lot with developing our storyboard. And then we interviewed a lot of people who are very passionate about the dark skies, particularly in southern Alberta, because a lot of the light pollution stuff that you can find online is great and fantastic. And it is not necessarily about things that the Alberta students are going to see in their backyard, because we all love sea turtles and we've all seen Finding Nemo, but we do not have any species of turtle whatsoever in Alberta. So I was just trying to get them to care about it in different species that they might actually see when they're looking outside their own door. So I think that's it. We're just going to show the video.
Yeah, that seems to be, let's see here. Aha, there it is.
Darkness. The Earth is floating in a vast sea of darkness, orbiting our sun, which provides light for a limited time each day. However, since the advent of the industrial age, we have begun to illuminate the night with artificial light. As cities grow, so does the glow of the urban night sky, so much so that the stars are often no longer visible from our homes. With the increasing danger of losing our once dark nights, science is beginning to recognize just how critical they are not only to human health, but to the Earth's plant and animal populations. Scotobiology, the study of how biological systems are impacted by the dark, has revealed that hanging in the delicate balance of nature is an inherent need for life to experience regular periods of natural, uninterrupted darkness.
Hi, my name is Maureen Lucksinger, and I'm the Education Coordinator at the Ann and Sandy Cross Conservation Area. The Cross Conservation Area is a 4,800-acre wildlife preserve that consists of aspen forest, prairie grasslands, creeks, and pond ecosystems. The land was generously donated by Anne and Sandy Cross in 1987. Passionate visionaries, both for the protection of the native species of wildlife and for the education of youth. The area is home to many different species of plants and a variety of wildlife, from the meadow vole to the skunks to fox to deers, cougars and bears, and some of which are nocturnal animals. Anne and Sandy donated this land as they were really concerned over the encroachment of the city of Calgary and what would happen to this land and to the wildlife on it. And as they had predicted, current threat to the health of this habitat is light pollution. And to talk on the topic of light pollution, we are now going to listen to our neighbor, Jennifer Howse.
I'm Jennifer Howse. I am the education specialist with the Rothney Astrophysical Observatory, and we are actually located about 5 minutes west of the Cross Conservation Area. So what is light pollution? What light pollution is it's light that is in excess. It's light that is trespassing into an area where it's not needed. It's light that's just going up into the sky, and it has no use or no function. And it's too much of a good thing. About 100 years ago, when we started to actually put lighting into cities, into city centers, and even into some rural areas, there was just enough light so that we could make our way at night. But now, since we live in a 24-hour society, light is everywhere, all the time, every night. And it's even almost very hard to escape all of that light. And the problem is now we're finding that it is too much, and that there is having negative effects on us as human beings, animals, plants, water systems, and of course, very important for us at the observatory, it's having an effect on how much of the night sky we can observe and research.
The Anne and Sandy Cross Conservation Area wanted to address the issue of light pollution, so we approached the Royal Astronomical Society of Canada, or RASC. We didn't fall under their existing dark sky designations as we are not open at night. However, in 2015, we became Canada's first nocturnal preserve. And to talk more about this topic, we are now going to meet Steve Danielson, who will talk to us about what a nocturnal preserve is, and starting with a little history of Steve.
Well, I'm a geologist by training, but I am an amateur astronomer by interest or avocation, if you will. I've always had an interest in the natural world, the solar system and the entire universe around us ever since I was a teenager. And astronomy is a way to really experience that broader universe for yourself rather than just getting your facts out of a book. You can look up in the sky, the night sky, with your own eyes and learn your way around. You can spend a little bit of money. You can buy a pair of binoculars or a relatively inexpensive telescope, and you can really look for these things yourself and experience them yourself without there being any sort of an intermediary. So it's really a way for you to personally connect with the universe, a larger world. Well, nocturnal preserves are one of 3 designations for dark sky sites that are recognized by the RASC. The first is dark sky preserves, then there are what are known as urban star parks, and then lastly the nocturnal preserves. So the dark sky preserves are areas where the area within the preserve is just as dark as the outlying areas around it. So this is basically a pristine environment in terms of the quality of the nighttime sky. There are areas where the public is also educated about the importance of dark skies to the environment and to astronomers, and as well there's an ability, a capability of doing astronomy within these dark sky preserves. Urban star parks, on the other hand, are sort of islands of darkness where you have a designated area adjacent to or within an urban area. There is no uplight or glare within that area, even though outside that urban star park it might be quite brightly lit. The urban star parks also, I don't think there's an educational component, but they do allow interested people to come in and conduct astronomy under sort of locally dark skies, even though the surrounding area may be brighter than normal. Lastly, nocturnal preserves were designated to be sort of a hybrid area where you are getting that public outreach to the general public about the importance of nighttime skies. You're getting the surrounding skies because you may be adjacent to a larger urban center. The areas outside the dark sky preserve may be marginally brighter than you would expect for or hope for a dark sky preserve. However, you're getting the educational aspect, but there is, the only thing with a nocturnal preserve, it's more about preservation of the natural environment. There's no precondition that there has to be any astronomy done with a nocturnal preserve. So these are sort of the three designations. The nocturnal preserve is more directed towards preservation of the nighttime environment for nocturnal species and education and outreach, but not necessarily astronomy.
At the Nocturnal Preserve, we not only protect nocturnal animals, but all living organisms, as all living organisms have circadian rhythms. A circadian rhythm is our internal biological clock that works on a 24-hour day-night cycle. This clock is within humans as well. The amount of light during the day changes through the season and provides cues for animals to make adaptations. In the winter, as the daylight is shorter, the weasels and hares know it's time to put on their fur coats of white. And as the seasons change to spring, they know the daylight is longer, and they know that they need to change into a brown fur coat. Seasonal changes also have impacts on plants. In the fall, when the daylight is shorter, they start to prepare for winter, creating buds. And as the spring approaches and the daylight is longer, those buds appear as leaves. To talk more about the biological impacts, we are talking with Lisa Dalside, a biologist and friend to all wildlife.
I'm Lisa Dalside. I work with the Weaselhead Glenmore Park Preservation Society and the Cochrane Ecological Institute. From a biological perspective, it's really important to promote dark sky initiatives because it's not even just the animals that exist in our ecosystems, but the plants that are the source of our food and our shelter and everything that the animals depend on in the environment. They also rely on the dark skies. Everything has existed for such a long period of time without the source of human light that their biological responses are based on the light and the dark skies the dark skies that we have. So it's important to have these for insects, for example. We've all seen how insects will fly towards a light if you're in a campground, let's say, with your one light that's on. That can really distort then the source of food for all the birds that are hunting at night, because where did their insects go? They're now all gathered around a light that they're not going to go to. So it becomes important on so many levels with so many different species that in an ecosystem sense, it can really protect an ecosystem if we're really conscious of our lighting in those urban environments, as well as being conscious to protect a vast amount of area, such as the Ann and Sandy Cross Conservation Area, to ensure that it will always be dark for those animals and plants. There's a lot of different species that I've worked with that are impacted by light pollution. One would be migratory birds. And a lot of birds will actually migrate at nighttime. And so whole flocks can be impacted by the presence of a downtown skylight. They can come and hit a building, and this has been documented for many, many decades, that this is a huge impact on their populations, that these nighttime migratory bird species are being attracted to lights that are man-made source, and it's impacting them negatively. They're hitting buildings and they're dying. I worked also with an endangered species called the swift fox. We work at the Cochrane Ecological Institute with the reintroduction of swift fox. They were declared extirpated from Canada, likely lost in the 1920s, when they were extirpated, locally extinct from the country of Canada, but not recognized until 1978. They were given that designation. They are active at night and they sleep during the day. And so having that presence of dark skies is very important to them, because unlike the red fox that adapted so well to human presence and is not affected by lighting or activity of humans, houses, the swift fox did not adapt to that. So when the European settlers came and expanded across the landscape, the grasslands is where they occur, where a lot of our cities occur as well. We lost the swift fox because they couldn't adapt to live alongside us the way that the red fox happily did. And so preserving those night skies for them is really important as their populations hopefully are expanding in Canada. The largest population of swift fox in Canada occur in Grasslands National Park in Saskatchewan. This is because this is where the Cochrane Ecological Institute released a lot of our swift fox. Just over 1,000 swift fox were released in that area of Canada. And so the Grasslands National Park also happens to be one of Canada's largest dark sky preserves. So this is wonderful for swift fox that are active at night, that have an intricate relationship in the food chain with the insects that are affected by light pollution, with the songbirds, the migratory birds that are affected by light pollution, with the amphibians, as they'll also eat them. So all these animals that they depend on as a food source, wherever they are in the world, if they are a migratory bird, for example, they're getting affected, and their populations are affected by the light skies. So these preserves are very important then to protect the swift fox that are occurring in Saskatchewan as well.
These ecological impacts are affecting larger communities.
All residents of the MDF foothills and highlights two special consideration areas near the Rothney Astrophysical Observatory and the Wilson Cooley Observatory. The bylaw purpose is to regulate the type of light source and fixtures to mitigate further light pollution and reduce light pollution that is shown to adversely affect astronomical observation, plant and animal cycles, and the safety and health of persons in the MD. Our community values dark skies as a part of the enjoyment of country living. Many people care about the health of our environment, creatures great and small, and are open to learn more to do something to preserve dark skies when they find out it is a concern and learn how they can help. It is great to have a nocturnal preserve example in our community to inspire people and to educate them about the effects of developing practices that are in harmony with our surroundings and that respect nature's cycles and health of interconnected systems. The benefits of a diverse ecology are having an overall interconnected, healthy landscape where all creatures are functioning at their optimum abilities. A nocturnal preserve highlights the importance of dark skies on all our landscapes, also adjoining, since light trespasses. It's the start of thoughtful neighborhood action. I believe that the Ann and Sandy Cross Conservation Area Nocturnal Preserve will inspire local residents and future developments to preserve connected landscapes with dark sky considerations, which will spread whole landscape, community-minded, thoughtful planning. We will see more nocturnal parks and preserves.
Having a nocturnal preserve in our area, in our community, is a wonderful thing. It allows us to look out into a dark space when we look to the east of the observatory, and we're able to see a dark sky above the cross conservation area. This is also another chance for us to come and set up our telescopes as well and be able to have a look at the night sky from this location as well. The research that astronomers conduct needs dark skies, and it also helps us to understand our place in the universe. That if we have dark skies, there's so many fascinating, endless things that we can learn about the sky around us, the near-Earth space exploration, and well beyond.
The Ann and Sandy Cross Conservation Area is proud to be a nocturnal preserve because it provides homes for a diverse community of wildlife, from the smallest wildflower to the prickliest porcupines to those gazers of the night sky, astronomers. One of these astronomers, Steve, will show us an example of a light fixture that you too can incorporate into your dark sky friendly practices. Following this excellent example, we will hear from engaged community members who will share their ideas about how to make the world a little darker and healthier.
We really want to avoid a light streaming from a source out sideways, causing glare into the person's eyes, or going upwards, which is what's called uplight, and that's basically just wasted money. I mean, you're lighting up the bellies of birds flying overhead at night. So it's all about using only as much light as you need and properly directing it downwards and shielding it to reduce glare. Here's another example of an awesome lighting fixture. Again, it's daytime, it's not on, that's a good thing. It's not lighting up stuff during the day. And this particular one, again, the light bulb is recessed within the fixture. And this particular type of fixture is called a shoebox fixture for obvious reasons. Again, it's covered on the top and on all four sides. So this is providing illumination which is strictly going downwards rather than to the sides or going up, which would be a waste. So down lighting is good, glare, lighting to the side and going up is bad, and this is a good fixture.
Learn more about dark skies, and then with a personal and friendly touch, inspire at least one other person and let them know that reasons why dark skies and preservation of dark skies are so important, and help them to change a fixture or change a habit.
To reduce light pollution in our community, we can talk to the people we know about the problem and to please turn off the lights when they're not in the room.
I think it's important to me just because I've grown up with the dark skies and they're one of my favorite things. It's what I want to do when I grow up, my passion. It's my favorite thing to do.
I think that sharing my knowledge with people definitely helps prevent light pollution because they would know more about what light pollution even is and different ways that you can stop light pollution.
My family turns off our lights a lot because we know it's really bright out and we don't exactly need, we don't really need all the lights, which can really help the dark skies, and I hope that other students do that too because it could really help the sky.
People today often don't look very far into the future when they're making a decision, and this is one of the problems with one of the reasons why we have dark sky initiatives is because we don't do very good planning. We don't look into the future much. And so we plan these urban environments, and now we have light pollution. We make decisions that aren't very thoughtful and don't really consider our grandchildren and our great-grandchildren. And I hope that children, as they grow up, these things start really setting in their minds so that when they make the decisions, they're thinking of all the generations ahead of them, or the ones that are coming behind them, so that they can help protect biodiversity so that humans can enjoy it and survive from it for a long term.
This is really important to me because I love animals and it does affect animals, but it also affects my health, people's health. It affects wildlife. It affects trees and plants and forests. It affects so much.
Dark skies are important for animals and for the plants to go through photosynthesis and for the nocturnal animals to have a time to hunt.
Well, what I think we can do and what the government can do is that the government can lower now LED lights to 2,700 Kelvin, and what I feel like we can do is like change lights into spotlights or like lower their wattage, I guess, to make them not as bright, and also direct them at the ground to make sure that they don't spill, like the light doesn't spill up into the sky.
I care about this because let's say when I'm older and I don't want my children growing up or anyone related to me growing up in a world that's only light. I want them to see the natural skies and stargaze and know that we're not alone and that there's so much more exploration to be done out there.
For the future, I hope that students will think about being good citizens in the world. Good citizens mean treating people kindly and fairly within your community. And that includes how you live, And that even includes how you light the areas that you live in. So I hope in the future that you'll be able to think about very smart design so that people can feel safe and secure, have the lighting they need, but at the same time also think about the wider world community and how you live with animals, how you live with plants, and how you live sustainably within these communities.
Well, protecting dark skies and nocturnal preserves is being like aware of what you're doing, aware of how many lights you turn on, aware of what you do to cause light pollution. There's a lot of things I can do, like turning off one light, but it's not that I can do it, it's that if I do it and influence all the other people, it's going to turn into something bigger. So I just want to let people know that you can turn off those lights, and it would help a lot to everybody to see the beautiful stars.
Light pollution is a very easy thing to fix. And I'm really encouraged when I hear about research in places like, for example, the country of the Netherlands. And they have some very fascinating ways of lighting roads, lighting street spaces that are both safe and very effective. But at the same time, these special spaces that they're developing and designing allow for dark skies, and how we can live within those dark skies and still maintain our normal, healthy circadian rhythms, because we do need a dark night and we do need a bright day.
Nocturnal preserves recognize not only the beauty of the dark skies, but also their fundamental ecological importance. Isn't it time for us all to join forces with the dark night?
Sounds of the wilderness. Well, great. Thank you so very much for those three presentations. And does anybody have any questions? I was wondering how the curriculum that you've created, you said there were 3 grade levels, right, that you serve?
At the observatory, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And is that curriculum unique to your situation, or have you shared it with other educators elsewhere?
No, it's Alberta Learning, and so it's a curriculum that's handed to us. So this is what teachers are expected to cover within their classrooms, and then we are the field trip that's associated with that aspect of the curriculum. Yes.
Okay, so you're a component of it.
Correct.
Okay, great. Anyone have any questions?
I was just curious if you could speak a little bit about the demographics of the students that you work with or the schools that you work with and what that outreach process is like. Do they approach you guys? Do you approach them? Just kind of curious.
Okay. It just depends. When we do the joint program, we have, it's specifically for grade 6, so we send information out to all the schools and ensure that they are aware of our programming. We've gone to teacher conventions and then talked to the teachers from different, from the city of Calgary, from the municipalities, so they, just to promote this program, and it brought out a number of schools to this area, but mostly in the grade 6 category for the joint program. But from the biological conservation side, the part of the cross conservation area, we've also incorporated into that Open Minds program that I talked about, and we've shared the information from a biological conservation viewpoint from grades 3 to 12. So it just depends on the school, the level. So we've got students from Calgary, we've got students from the municipality, and many different grade levels for the Open Minds, but for our joint program, it's fundamentally the grade 6 program. Did you want to add?
As far as diversity, we do, we reach out to different communities. We've been very fortunate that who has been responding is some of the members of the Indigenous community. So we've got Indigenous groups from the Boys and Girls Club, Scouts, some of the schools that are on reserves, like Tsutsina. So we've been very, very successful reaching out to them, and so they participate every year, and they have been for, I think, the past decade now. And also, charter schools are another thing that sometimes you have in Alberta. We've got schools that are more specialized, say perhaps they focus on science or arts, and we're able to meet their requirements as well.
And we are a nonprofit, but we also, in regard to some of our other programs, we do approach other sponsors to see if they can pay for the busing for high needs schools to come out who might not otherwise have an opportunity to come to such a distant location. So we also do those sorts of things.
And always we incorporate special needs students as well, and we've had students on the trails with wheelchairs and different capacities. So everyone is welcome, and we find a way to make it work.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, anybody else? If not, I think we'll just thank you very much for pulling all that great information together. It's a lot of work. We appreciate that.